My CEO fiancée married my rival abroad, then returned to find I'd sold my shares overnight. The champagne was warm. Not room temperature, warm. Like it had been sitting out for too long while someone forgot why they ordered it. I stood behind the marble column at the Ritz, the one facing Place Vendôme, and watched Victoria laugh. It wasn't her boardroom laugh, the tight, controlled chuckle she used to signal approval to sycophants. This was different, looser, real. She was wearing the Cartier diamonds I'd helped her pick out last month. Beside her sat Alexander Dupont, 40 years old, French, with the kind of effortless tan that suggested a yacht rather than a trading floor. He was swirling a glass of Macallan, his pinky ring catching the light. They weren't discussing synergies or EBITDA. They were talking about me, settling. Victoria was saying. Her voice carried just enough in the still air. Julian's meticulous. I'll give him that. But he thinks in quarters. Alex, I think in eras. He's a brilliant fund manager, but he doesn't have the vision to run a global empire. Marrying him would be comfortable, and comfort is a death sentence in our world. Dupont leaned in, his accent a smooth blade. And our union? You don't see that as a merger of equals. Ma querida, Victoria smiled, a flash of white teeth that looked predatory even from 20 feet away. I see it as acquiring a majority stake in the future. Your European distribution, my AI patents, will own the fucking world. Julian manages money, will beta money. I didn't move. I didn't crush the stem of my glass. I just listened. The engagement ring I'd been carrying in my pocket, a custom-cut emerald, her favorite, suddenly felt like a lead weight. I'd planned to propose tonight. Instead, I turned around, walked out of the bar, and kept walking until I hit the Seine. I threw the ring into the black water. It didn't make a sound. 2 weeks later, I was back in New York. My office at Vance Capital, Midtown, floor-to-ceiling glass. But I kept the blinds half shut. Marcus was pacing. He does that when the numbers scare him. Julian, talk to me. You've been quiet since Paris. Too quiet. We're up 15% this month. But you're staring at SDK like it's a loaded gun. Sterling Tech. Tika Zimbul STK. Victoria's Kingdom. I tapped the screen. We're buying. Marcus stopped. Buying? Julian, we're a hedge fund, not a goddamn mutual fund. We don't take positions in single names without a catalyst. What's the play? A short? Is there a whistleblower? A DOJ investigation I don't know about? No short. I said, we're going long. Very long. He ran a hand through his hair. Long? Jesus. You want to buy into Victoria Sterling's vanity project? The PE ratio is 60. 60. It's priced for perfection. One missed quarter and it gets cut in half. And besides, she's engaged to DuPont now. You saw them in Paris. Every financial blog from here to Hong Kong is talking about the transatlantic power couple. Buying SDK right now is like buying a ticket on the Titanic after it hit the iceberg. I swiveled my chair to face him. She called me comfortable. Marcus, do you know what that means in her lexicon? It means predictable, measurable risk. She thinks I'm a calculator with a pulse. So, let's give her something to calculate. I pulled up the offshore accounts. We're not just buying shares. We're buying the float. I want 10%. 15, if the liquidity holds. Use the leverage. All of it. Marcus's jaw dropped. 15%? That's not a position. It's a siege. Julian, if this goes south, we're not just broke. We're extinct. The margin calls alone will bury us. And SEC regulations. We'll have to file a 13D the second we cross 5%. She'll know it's you. Let her know. I said, but we don't file the 13D. We use the Caymans, the Bahamas, the shell companies in Luxembourg. I want our name nowhere near the tape until I say so. We route everything through prime brokers who don't ask questions. Cost is an issue. Efficiency is. But why? Julian? Why buy into the company she's using to fuck you over? It's emotional. It's not the market. It's exactly the market. I corrected him. She's leveraged her reputation, on this AI breakthrough. DuPont is leveraging his European network. They need the NASDAQ listing to stay liquid. If the stock price wavers, their whole house of cards shakes. I'm not buying a stock. Marcus, I'm buying the strings to their marionettes. Makusite, sinking into the chair opposite my desk. You're planning something. Something big. Something that's going to give me an ulcer. Just tell me one thing. What happens when she finds out? I looked back at the screen. SDK was ticking up on news of a strategic partnership with DuPont's firm. Green candles. Healthy. Strong. Exactly when you want to start digging the grave. When she finds out, I said softly, it'll be too late to matter. I'm not here to stop her wedding. Marcus, I'm here to ensure the reception is a funeral. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I hadn't deleted yet. Victoria, back in NYC. We need to talk. My place, 8 p.m. I stared at it. Marcus leaned over to look. Don't go. It's a trap. She'll play the victim. Or worse, she'll try to buy you off. I typed a response. Short, precise. See you at the top. I hit send. Marcus frowned. The top? Her penthouse? That's playing into her hands. It's not about her penthouse. I said, watching the SDK ticker climb higher. It's about the peak, the apex, the moment before the fall. She thinks she's marrying power. I'm going to show her what power really looks like. I turned back to the terminal. The quiet hum of the servers filled the room. Somewhere in the building, a trader shouted about a crude oil spike. It was background noise. My focus was absolute. Execute the buys. I told Marcus, start with the September calls. Roll them into January if the premium drops. I want every share we can get without moving the tape more than 20 basis points. And Marcus? Find me everything on DuPont's leverage. If he's using Credit Suisse or Deutsche Bank, I want the loan covenants. If he's leveraged against his art collection, I want the appraisals. I need to know exactly how much pressure it takes to make him crack. Marcus stood up, shaking his head but already reaching for his keyboard. You're insane. You know that, right? Insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. I replied, I'm doing the opposite of what she expects. That's not insanity. That's arbitrage. I spent the rest of the afternoon watching the volume. We were eating up shares like a vacuum. By the close, we were at 9%. Invisible, but growing. Victoria was probably at some gala right now, smiling for the cameras with DuPont. Let her smile. Smiles are easy to wipe off. My phone buzzed again. Victoria, 8 p.m. Don't be late. We have a lot to discuss regarding the future. I didn't reply. The future wasn't hers to discuss anymore. It was mine to trade. I shut down the monitors and stood up. The sun was setting over the Hudson, casting long shadows across the office floor. See you at the top, Victoria. I whispered to the empty room. Let's see how high you scream when the ground disappears. I grabbed my coat. Time to go to work. The real work. The kind that doesn't show up on a balance sheet until it's too late to hide. The keypad on my apartment door blinked red. Wrong code. I stood in the hallway of the building on Park Avenue, listening to the silence on the other side of the walnut veneer. It wasn't silent for long. Julian, open this door. Victoria's voice had that razor edge to it, the one she usually reserved for junior analysts who missed their marks. I leaned against the opposite wall, still in my suit, and watched the peephole darken as she pressed her eye to it. I know you're in there, she said, her tone dropping from a shout to a hiss. Don't be a child. I unlocked the door and stepped back. She pushed past me. The scent of her perfume, something expensive with oud and rose, filling the entryway. She looked the same, maybe a little more tan. Probably the south of France. Her hair was pulled back in that severe way she liked when she wanted to look executive. You changed the locks, she said, stating the obvious as she walked into the living room. Her eyes scanned the space. Everything was in its place, except for the row of Rimawood trunks lined up by the fireplace. Her trunks. I had the movers deliver these this morning. I said, closing the door. They were cluttering the storage unit. She ignored the boxes. Turning to face me, "We need to talk about Paris. I know you were there. I saw the charge on your corporate card at the Ritz bar. You could have said hello. Julian, instead, you disappeared like a ghost. Ghosts don't pay for champagne." I replied, walking to the wet bar. I didn't offer her a drink. I figured you were busy. Closing a deal. Signing a marriage certificate. Something with a high yield. She waved a hand, dismissing it. "Alex is a means to an end. You know that. The European market is impenetrable without local capital. He provides a capital. I provide the technology. It's a transaction. You and I were different. We're legacy." I poured myself a bourbon. "Neat. Legacy. Right. So, you married a French billionaire for a transaction, and you're here to tell me that my role in this legacy is what? Exactly? CFO? Or just a guy who holds your purse while you conquer the world? Don't be crass." She snapped. She moved toward me, her posture softening. It was a charm-offensive play. I'd seen it 100 times in the boardroom. I spoke to legal. "We've drafted a new prenup. If you come back on board, publicly, as my fiancée, you'll get 10% of the merged entity. Voting shares. Julian, 10%. You'd be one of the most powerful men in tech. Not just a guy moving money around in a hedge fund." I took a sip of the bourbon. It burned. 10%. That's generous. Considering you gave DuPont 51% of your actual company in the transaction. Her face twitched. "Just for a second. That's not your concern. His stake is structured differently. It's preferred equity. It converts under certain conditions. But I retain operational control. Mostly. I repeated. I set the glass down on the bar with a sharp click. "See, that's the problem. Victoria, you're hedging. You married him to get his distribution. But you're coming back to me because you know he's going to bury you the second that conversion clause hits. You want me to be the buffer, the safety net, the comfortable option you can use when the real gamble goes bust." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're paranoid. Alex respects me. He needs me without my AI patents. His entire European rollout is a joke." "Is that what he told you?" I asked, pulling my phone from my pocket. I didn't open an app. I just looked at her. "Or is that what you told yourself so you could sleep at night? Enough with the riddles," she said, her voice rising again. "I'm offering you a seat at the table. Julian, a real table, not this tiny desk you hide behind. Take it, or spend the rest of your career wondering what it feels like to actually build something instead of betting on other people's failures." I met her gaze. Cold, flat. "I don't bet on failures. Victoria, I create them." I turned the phone screen toward her. It wasn't a photo or a text. It was a live trading feed. Specifically, the after-hours tape for Sterling Tech. "What is this?" she asked, leaning in. Then she saw it. The volume bars. Massive blocks. Hundreds of thousands of shares changing hands in the last hour. And the price dipping, not crashing, but bleeding out slowly. Who's selling? We announced the merger. The street loves it. Why is the price? Because someone with a lot of shares decided to exit their position. I said, quietly, through dark pools and block trades. No fighting's, no fanfare, just selling. Who? She demanded. Was a fund? A rogue investor? It was me. I said, every single share I acquired over the last 2 weeks, all 4.9% of it, sold overnight. She stared at me, her mouth slightly open. You bought it just to sell it? You lost millions in slippage and fees. Why would you do that? To see who'd buy it. I said, I swiped the screen to the next page. A confirmation receipt. The counterparty was listed as DuPont Global Equities. Turns out, your new husband was very eager to accumulate more of your company. He bought every share I offered, at a 20% discount to yesterday's close. The color drained from her face. You sold to Alex? You bastard. Do you realize what you've done? You've handed him the leverage to gut me. If he owns another 20%, he can force a vote. He can replace the board. I didn't hand him anything. I said, stepping closer. I sold him a liability. You see, Victoria, when you marry someone, you don't just share a bed, you share risk. And I made sure he knows exactly how much debt you've buried in those AI patents of yours. The ones you haven't amortized properly. The ones that are currently being audited by the IRS. You wouldn't. She whispered. I already did. I said, I included a data package with the sale. A courtesy, really, showing him where the bodies are buried. Now, he's not just your husband. He's your largest creditor. And he's holding a shovel. She reached out, grabbing my arm. Her nails dug in. Fix this. Julian, please. If he calls the loans. If he forces a liquidation. I'll lose everything. The company. The name, everything. I looked down at her hand on my arm. Then I peeled her fingers back. One by one. You lost everything the moment you decided comfortable was a death sentence. You wanted a global empire? Congratulations. You just married the tax collector. And I'm the guy who told him where the vault is. I walked to the door and opened it. The movers will be here in an hour to take those trunks to your building. Don't come back. Victoria, the next time you see me, it'll be in a filing with the SEC. And it won't be a love letter. She stood there, trembling, the phone still in her hand, showing the red ink of her company's falling stock. For a second, I thought she might cry. But Victoria Sterling didn't cry. She calculated. As she walked out, she paused in the doorway. This isn't over. Julian, it is for you, I said, and closed the door. I went back to the bar and finished my bourbon. On the TV mounted on the wall, CNBC was already flashing a breaking news alert. Sterling Tech shares slip amid unusual after-hours trading. I muted it. Marcus called 5 minutes later. I could hear the panic in his voice, even through the encrypted line. Julian, what the hell? I just saw the tape. You dumped everything? To DuPont? Are you trying to start a war? The war started in Paris. Marcus, I said, I just picked a side. Now, listen carefully. We're not done. We're going to short the suppliers. Start with Aerodynamics Incorporated. They're SDK's primary chip fabricator. Leak the rumor that Sterling is delaying payments. Watch the dominoes fall. Jesus, you're really going to burn it all down. I'm not burning it down, I said, watching the red ticker crawl across the silent television. I'm just making sure she can't rebuild. Call me when DuPont starts asking questions. I'll be waiting. I hung up. The city lights twinkled outside, indifferent to the wreckage I'd just set in motion. Victoria thought she was a queen. I was about to show her she was just another asset on a balance sheet, one that had just been marked to zero. The boardroom smelled like expensive cologne and bad faith. I wasn't there. I never needed to be in the room, but Marcus was patched in on the secure line, feeding me the audio while I watched the SDK ticker bleed out on my secondary monitor. Down another 4% since open. Victoria looks like she hasn't slept since Tuesday. Marcus whispered. The mic picked up the rustle of paper, the creak of leather chairs. Then DuPont's voice, smooth as ever, cutting through the static. Shall we begin? DuPont said, given the current volatility, I'd like to formally introduce Resolution 14B, a rights issuance to existing shareholders. One right for every share held. Exercise price set at 80% of the current market value. Proceeds to be used to shore up our, shall we say, questionable liquidity position. A murmur went around the table. I could picture Victoria's face, that tight, frozen smile she used when she was about to lose a negotiation. Alex, we discussed this, Victoria said. Her tone clipped. We don't need a fire sale. The AI patent litigation is under control. Our Q3 guidance is strong. Your guidance is based on our D figures that don't account for the accelerated write-downs we discussed in Paris. DuPont countered. And as for the patents, Julian was kind enough to include a forensic summary with his share transfer. It seems the IPU license from Neuralink was never properly assigned. There's a clawback provision. If they enforce it, we lose the core of our valuation. You're citing Julian's lies? Victoria shot back. He's trying to crater the stock. He sold you those shares at a discount because he knew you'd overpay for a lemon. He didn't lie about the Neuralink contract. Marcus interjected softly into my ear. I checked the filings this morning. Exhibit B, Subsection 4. She signed herself. If Neuralink pulls a license, SDK's entire next-gen AI platform is just a PowerPoint presentation. On the call, DuPont chuckled. Victoria, darling, I married the CEO of a thriving enterprise. I did not marry a woman whose primary asset is a stack of improperly filed paperwork. The rights issuance is a suggestion. It's a condition of my continued support. If we don't raise capital internally, I'm forced to call the bridge loan. And, as you know, that loan is secured by your personal shares. Silence. Then the sound of a pen tapping. Victoria's nervous tell. You bankrupt your own wife? She asked, her voice dangerously low. In France, we have a concept, separation de biens. DuPont said, my assets remain mine. Your debts, however, are yours alone. Unless, of course, you sign the resolution. It dilutes your stake. Yes, but it keeps the lights on. For now, dilution. Victoria repeated. You're talking about a 30% dilution of the common float. That'll tank the stock below $10. Then I suggest you find a way to reassure the market. DuPont said, or I'll be forced to exercise my warrants early, at the current price. That would give me majority control. And I do so hate redundancy at the C-suite level. I muted Marcus for a second, leaning back in my chair. The pieces were moving exactly as planned. DuPont wasn't just a rival. He was a vulture. And I'd tossed him the freshest carcass in Midtown. But he didn't know the whole truth yet. He didn't know about the offshore liabilities I'd buried in the sale agreement, the ones tied to the Luxembourg shell companies. If he triggered those, his entire European operation would feel the heat. I unmuted Marcus. Tell me when they vote. They're voting now. Marcus whispered. 1, 2, 3 ayes. Victoria's abstaining. DuPont votes his block. Resolution 14B passes. 7-2. Good. I said, now watch the tape. The SDK ticker didn't just dip, it cratered. News of the rights issuance hit the wire, and algorithmic traders piled on, down 12% in 5 minutes. I opened a new position, deep out of the money puts, cheap as dirt. But they'd print if the stock hit single digits by Friday. Julian, Marcus said, his voice tight. She's leaving the room, heading for the elevators. She looks, I don't know, unraveled. Let her unravel. I said, send the second packet to DuPont's office, the one about the Luxembourg debt. Make sure it's marked privilege confidential. I want him to know I'm not done playing. You're pushing him toward a cliff too. You know, Marcus warned, if he goes down, the ripple effects could hit your other positions. The contagion is for epidemiologists. I cut him off. This is finance. Everything is connected until you sever the right wire. I sever Victoria's. Now I'm just waiting for DuPont to realize his wire is fraying. I hung up and dialed a different number. A gruff voice answered on the second ring. Yeah, it's Vance. The SEC tip line. Did you get the envelope? Burner email sent. Anonymize the docs. They'll be reading about Sterling's accounting irregularities by the evening news cycle. Make sure it mentions the offshore payments. I said, subtly, I want the Justice Department asking questions by Monday. You're a cold son of a bitch. Vance, I'm a calculator. I replied and ended the call. My phone buzzed. A blocked number. I answered. You. Victoria's voice hissed. No preamble. You sent the Neuralink docs to Alex. You knew about the clawback. You set this up from the start. Good afternoon to you too, Victoria. I said, swiveling my chair to face the window. The sun was starting to set, painting the skyline orange. I didn't set it up. I just read the fine print you ignored. You were so busy counting the votes for your merger that you forgot to check who owned the pen. I'll sue you, she spat, for everything. The shares, the lies, the on what grounds. I interrupted. I bought shares legally. I sold them legally. I even included a courtesy note with the transaction. If you sue me, discovery opens. Your offshore accounts, the Neuralink side deals, the misreported RD expenses, all of it becomes public record. Is that the legacy you want? Victoria Sterling, convicted of securities fraud? Doesn't quite fit on a business card. She went quiet. I could hear her breathing, ragged, uneven. What do you want? She finally asked, the fight draining out of her voice. Want? I echoed. I wanted you to see what comfortable looks like when it's gone. I wanted you to sit in that boardroom and realize that the man you married is the one holding the knife. And I wanted you to know that every time you look at a balance sheet, every time you see a stock ticker, you'll remember that I built the cage. And I don't need to lock the door. You'll never have the key again. I paused, letting the silence hang. But since you asked, there's one thing. Stay away from my fund. Stay away from my brokers. And if I ever see your name on a proxy statement again, I'll release the third packet, the one about the Cayman trusts. Your father's name is on those. Victoria, do you think the street will care about legacy when they realize the Sterling name was built on a foundation of sand? You're a monster, she whispered. I'm the market, I said, and the market doesn't forgive. It just prices in the risk. I ended the call and tossed the phone onto the desk. On the monitor, SDK hit a new low, $8 and change. DuPont's rights issuance was a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound, and he'd just spent his political capital to apply it. He'd be looking for someone to blame soon, and when he did, I'd be there not to help, but to watch the second act of collapse. Marcus called back. Julian, the SEC, just issued a comment letter to SDK, asking about irregularities in international licensing revenue. How did you? I didn't. I said, I just pointed the flashlight. They're the ones tripping over the wires. Get me the 4 on the put options. I want to double down before the bell. You're really going to let it hit 0, aren't you? 0 is just a number. I said, but for Victoria, it's a destination. I hung up and watched the red numbers crawl across the screen. Somewhere in the city, Victoria was realizing that her empire wasn't made of steel and silicon. It was made of paper. And paper burns fast when you strike the match. The underground poker room on the Lower East Side didn't have a sign. You just knocked, and if Vinny liked your face, he buzzed you in. I found her in the back corner, hunched over a lukewarm gin and tonic, watching a hand of Texas hold M like it was a funeral procession. She wasn't playing. She didn't have the chips, literally or metaphorically. Victoria Sterling looked small. The severe bun was gone, replaced by greasy strands clinging to her temples. The tailored suit was wrinkled, the knees of her pants shiny from wear. She looked up as I slid into the cracked vinyl booth across from her. No surprise, no anger, just a dull, hollow recognition. You look like hell. I said, fuck you, Julian, she replied, but there was no heat in it. She took a long pull of the gin. Come to gloat? Watch the corpse twitch? I came because you keep calling my burner phone. I said, tossing the device onto the table. It skittered across the laminate. 5 times today. That's pathetic, even for you. She stared at the phone, then back at me. Her eyes were bloodshot. He's going to ruin me. Alex, he's calling the bridge loan. The banks are spooked because of the SEC letters you leaked. They're freezing the credit lines. If they force liquidation, I lose the patents. The house in the Hamptons, everything. My name will be on a DOJ indictment by Christmas. Should have read the prenup. I said, or the share transfer agreement, or any of the fine print you're so famously allergic to. I know what you did, she hissed, leaning forward. The smell of cheap alcohol and desperation rolled off her. You didn't just sell in the shares. You sold in the problem, the Luxembourg debt, the Neuralink clawbacks. You made sure he was leveraged to the eyeballs when he bought in. Now the stock's at $8, and his margin calls are due Monday. He's going to blow up, and I'm going down with him. Happy? Ecstatic. I said, but you're wrong about one thing. He's not going to blow up on Monday. She blinked. What? The margin calls are due Sunday night, European time. I clarified. Frankfurt opens before New York, and Alex isn't just leveraged on SDK. He uses his entire European portfolio as collateral. If SDK drops below 750 at the open in Frankfurt, his prime broker auto-liquidates his positions across the board, not just SDK. Everything. Luxury brands. Shipping conglomerates. The vineyard in Bordeaux, all gone in a millisecond. Victoria's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked like she'd been punched. Why are you telling me this? She finally managed, because I need you to do something. I said, tomorrow morning, you hold a press conference. You get in front of the cameras, and you lie. You tell them the SEC inquiry is a misunderstanding, a software glitch in the accounting system. You reaffirm the Q4 guidance. You praise Alex for his unwavering support during this technical transition. You sell it, Victoria, like you sold the merger to the board, like you sold your wedding vows to a man you met 6 months ago. Are you insane? She whispered. If I lie to the SEC again, they'll crucify me. And if I prop up the stock, Alex survives a margin call. He'll still own me. Why would you want that? Because if the stock drops below 750 in Frankfurt, Alex defaults. I explained, my voice flat. His lenders seize his assets, including the 20% of SDK he bought from me. It all goes to fire sale. The stock craters to pennies. The company goes into Chapter 11. The patents get auctioned off to the highest bidder, probably some vulture fund in Connecticut. And you get nothing. No settlement. No golden parachute. Just a subpoena and a court date. Your legacy becomes a footnote in a bankruptcy filing. I leaned in, lowering my voice. But if you hold that press conference, if you lie convincingly, the stock stabilizes. Alex meets his margin call. He keeps his shares. He stays solvent, and he stays married to you, thinking he's dodged a bullet. But he'll owe me. He'll owe me for not releasing the second batch of documents, the ones proving you siphoned $18 million into that private foundation in Malta, the ones that show he married a woman who's already under federal investigation. He'll be in my debt, Victoria, and I'll own him, not the shares. Him. She stared at me, her knuckles white around the gin glass. You're not saving me. You're just moving me from one cage to another. No, I said, I'm giving you a choice. Choice A, you tell the truth tomorrow. The stock tanks. Alex blows up. You go to jail. Choice B, you lie. The stock holds. Alex survives. But he's shackled to you and indebted to me. You keep the penthouse, the jet, the illusion of power, and I get to watch you both squirm for the next decade while I dismantle what's left of your empire at my leisure. Which cage has better room service? She let out a harsh, broken laugh. You're a psychopath. I'm an opportunist. I corrected, and right now, the opportunity is you, standing at a podium, saving the man who's about to destroy you, while I pull the strings from 3,000 miles away. It's poetic. Really, you always wanted to be the face of the company. Tomorrow, you'll be exactly that, the face of a carefully constructed lie. She was quiet for a long time, watching the poker game behind me. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely audible. If I do this, if I lie for you, what's to stop you from releasing those Malta documents anyway? After he's already in? Nothing. I said, accept my word. And we both know how much that's worth. But consider this. If I release them now, he divorces you and leaves you for the wolves. If I release them after you played your part, he's already invested in the lie. He'll have to protect you to protect himself. He'll become your jailer, and I'll be the one holding the keys. It's the only way you survive this. Victoria, not as a queen, as a hostage, but a well-paid one. She finished the gin in one gulp and slammed the glass down. 9 o'clock tomorrow. The New York Stock Exchange steps. I'll do it. But Julian, when this is over, when you've had your fun, I want one thing. Name it. I want you to look me in the eye when you kill me, she said, not through a phone, not in a boardroom, face to face. So I can see the man who destroyed me. Deal, I said, standing up. I dropped a $100 bill on the table. 9 a.m. Don't be late. And Victoria, wear the blue suit, the one with the power shoulders. You'll need the armor. I walked out without looking back. The air outside was cold, biting. I lit a cigarette, a habit I quit 3 years ago. But some moments called for it. Across the street, a news ticker was already scrolling. Sterling tech volatility continues amid executive turmoil. I watched it for a minute, then crushed the cigarette under my heel. Marcus called as I hailed a cab. She took the bait. She'll be there. I said, get the Malta documents ready. I want them on DuPont's desk in Zurich by noon tomorrow. And Marcus? Buy me 5,000 December calls. Strike price $10. If she sells a lie, we're going to need the upside when the shorts cover. You're really going to squeeze them? After everything? I'm going to teach them both a lesson. I said, never underestimate the man you left behind, especially when he's the one holding the matches. I got into the cab and gave the driver my address. The city blurred past the window. Tomorrow, Victoria would stand on those steps and lie to the world. Alex would breathe a sigh of relief, thinking he'd survived the storm, and I'd be watching from the shadows, counting the seconds until the next trap sprung. The game wasn't over. It had only just begun. 9:02 a.m. Victoria stood on the Broad Street steps, the blue suit sharp under the Klieg lights. She was lying well, steady cadence, practiced smile, the word software glitch sliding out like gospel. I watched from a town car idling half a block down, the partition up, the live feed on a tablet in my lap. Next to me, Marcus was sweating through his shirt despite the AC. She's good, Marcus muttered. Real good. The futures are ticking up. Dos plus forti. Wait for it, I said. She finished the script I'd fed her. Praised DuPont's steadfast support. And then, just as the cameras panned back to the anchors, she ad-libbied. One sentence. Smooth, almost invisible. And we're actively engaging with new strategic investors to further fortify our balance sheet and accelerate global expansion. Marcus whipped his head toward me. Did she just open her mouth? I finished. Stick to the script. Victoria. Never at a comma. The phone rang. DuPont. I let it ring twice before answering. Vance. I said, you arrogant prick. DuPont's voice was a blade wrapped in silk. She just invited a white knight to the party. Do you have any idea what you've done? I stabilized this mess based on your assurance she'd toe the line. Now the spreads are widening again. Relax. Alex, I said, watching the SDK ticker on my screen. It had stalled, hovering at $7. 48. She's desperate. She's flailing. But you're right. It complicates the margin call. Frankfurt opens in 28 minutes. If that stock dips 2 cents, your prime broker auto-liquidates. And since you use your entire European book as collateral, well, say goodbye to the vineyard. I'll bury you, he hissed. I'll have the Bundesbank freeze your accounts. I'll have Interpol. You'll do nothing. I cut him off, because if you move against me, I leaked the Malta documents. The ones proving your wife embezzled $18 million to dodge you. Taxes. You'll be defending a RICO case before lunch. So here's the play. You let the liquidation happen. You let them seize the SDK shares. I'll buy them back at the fire sale price. Then I'll turn around and forgive the debt you owe me for the original share purchase. Clean slate. You walk away with your other assets intact. Victoria takes the fall. Everyone wins. Except her. Silence. Then a sharp inhale. You're buying the shares back? You're the buyer? This was your plan from the start. The short squeeze. The press conference. It was all a setup to acquire the company at pennies on the dollar. I prefer merger arbitrage. I said, but yes, now, make your choice. Call your broker and tell them to hold the line. Or don't. Either way, I'm getting those shares. I hung up. Marcus was staring at me. You're really going to own SDK? After everything? I'm going to own the debt. I corrected. The equity is just a bonus. Watch the tape. Frankfurt opened. The SDK listing there, thinly traded, dipped to $7. 46. DuPont's margin call triggered. Sell orders flooded the system. The New York ticker mirrored it, dropping to $7. 41. Then, just as the algorithms were about to cascade, a massive buy wall appeared at $7. 40. Mine. I'd routed it through 3 different dark pools, but the volume was unmistakable. The bleeding stopped. The stock bounced. DuPont called back. This time, his voice was hollow. Done. The shares are being transferred. I've instructed my counsel to draft the debt forgiveness. But Julian, this isn't over. I'll have your license. You'll have a drink Incan wondering what happened. I said, and ended the call. I stepped out of the car. The morning air was crisp. I walked toward the exchange, past the news vans. Victoria was still there, basking in the false glow of a recovering stock price. She saw me coming. Her smile faltered. "You did it," she said as I reached the steps. "The stock's stabilizing. Alex is safe. We're safe. Alex is finished," I said, loud enough for the nearest camera to catch. I nodded at the reporter, a friend from Wharton, who kept the lens trained on us. He just lost 20% of your company to cover a margin call. And I just bought it from the receiver. Her face went white. "What? You said you'd stabilize it. You said you'd protect us. I said I'd give you a choice." I corrected. "You chose to lie. You chose to play the part. And now you get the ending. I own the shares. Victoria. All of them. Including the ones Alex pledged as collateral. I own the debt. I own the patents. I own you." I pulled a folded document from my coat. "This is the bankruptcy petition. I'm filing it at noon. The board is already notified. They voted to remove you as CEO via emergency teleconference 10 minutes ago. You're officially persona non grata in your own company." She reached for it, but I pulled it back. "You can't, you wouldn't. I'll fight this. I'll sue you for fraud. I'll tell them about Paris, about the shares, about how you married a French billionaire to steal his capital, then try to defraud him by hiding debts." I finished. "Go ahead. Testify under oath. I'll bring the Malta documents, the Neuralink contracts, the IRS audit reports. You'll spend the next decade in a federal prison, and Alex will be joining you. Or," I leaned in, my voice dropping to a whisper, "or you can sign this. It's a general release. You waive all claims against me, against the company, against Alex. In exchange, I don't release the Malta files. You keep the Hamptons house. You keep the jet. You even get a small stipend, enough to live comfortably, but not enough to cause trouble. You disappear. Victoria. Quietly. No interviews. No memoirs. No tell-all podcasts. You vanish." She stared at the papers, her hands trembling. Behind her, the news ticker updated. "Sterling tech plummets amid leadership coup. Vance Capital emerges AS largest holder." "You're a monster," she whispered. "I'm the market," I said, "and the market just delisted you." She snatched the pen from my hand and scrawled her signature across the bottom of the page. Her movements were jerky, violent. When she finished, she shoved the papers back at me. "Get out of my sight," she said. "Gladly," I replied. I turned to the camera. "No comment," I told the reporter, then walked away without looking back. Marcus fell into step beside me. "Holy shit. Julian, you actually did it. You own SDK. You broke DuPont. You buried Victoria. What now? IPO? Asset strip? Sell to a competitor?" "None of the above," I said, stopping at the corner. I looked up at the skyscrapers, the sun glinting off the glass. "We hold it. We clean it up. We make it profitable. And then, in 5 years, we take it public again, at $100 a share. Let the next generation of Victoria Sterlings try to scalp it." I pulled out my phone, deleted the photos of her, the ones from Paris, the ones from happier times. Then I opened the trading app. SDK was at $6. 80, still reeling from the news. I placed one final order, a sell of all the December calls I bought that morning. Profit, $8 million, enough to cover the legal fees, and then some. "One more thing," I said to Marcus. "Draft a press release. Vance Capital announces strategic investment in Sterling Tech. Julian Vance appointed interim chairman. Keep it dry. Keep it boring. The less excitement, the better." "You're really going to run it?" Marcus asked, incredulous. "I'm going to own it," I said, "and I'm going to make sure that every time Victoria reads a ticker, she remembers who built the cage and who locked the door." I walked to the curb and hailed a cab. As I got in, I glanced back at the exchange. Victoria was still on the steps, surrounded by reporters, her lies unraveling in real time. DuPont was nowhere to be seen, probably on a plane to Geneva, his empire halved. The cab pulled into traffic. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and listened to the city hum. Somewhere, a trader was cheering a win. Somewhere else, a lawyer was drafting a subpoena. And somewhere in the middle of it all, I was just getting started. Where to? Boss? The driver asked. Grand Central. I said, I need a train. Going far? Just home. I replied, for now. I opened my eyes and watched the buildings blur past. The game was over, but the market never sleeps. And neither do I.